Okay, I think we're ready.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Heather Mechler, and I'm the Director of Institutional Analytics here at UNM. Some of you were at our Zoom presentation last Tuesday on gaining access to data, and I alluded to a few things that we'll be talking about today. I did not prepare slides only because this is so hands-on that I thought that having slides and then trying to attempt to do things on your own would be a little bit too onerous. I think we're all still getting used to Zoom, and we process information differently in this sort of format. So that said, if afterwards you would like some sort of typed notes or something like that, I'd be happy to provide that. So feel free to reach out if that would help you. But we'll be pretty casual today. If you have questions, feel free to just interrupt, unmute and say, Heather, I have a question, or can you go back and do that again, or whatever else comes to mind. So I am going to share my screen now, and we'll just start diving in on all the resources, and I hope you find it useful. All right, so I am going to share my screen. Yes. Okay, cool. Sometimes it's not always obvious. Cool. All right. So again, from last week, our website is oia.unm.edu. And the vast majority of the resources we're going to talk about and walk through today live under this facts and figures menu right here. This is, well, we'll spend most of our time. We also will check out our public gallery. One thing I do want to point out is on our welcome page, we do provide some guidance as to what resources you might consult, given the kind of question you have. I'd also like to highlight our data dictionary, which the Office of Assessment and APR worked on with us for a number of months last year. We launched it almost a year ago now. And it defines some of these terms that, for us are bread and butter in the, institutional research and analytics world, but may not necessarily be intuitive to normal people, meaning all of you. So be sure to check that out. The link to it lives right on our homepage there. So with that said, I'm going to dive into something first that pertains to undergraduate populations, but then the bulk of our time will be spent looking at data that pertains to graduate populations, only because I know that a lot of the grants that people write do focus on graduate education, particularly as it pertains to women and people of color in STEM fields. And so we'll focus a little bit more on that. I will be soliciting some ideas from you all, right? As to like what kind of groupings or majors or things like that that you'd like to look at. So when I ask for those, if you don't feel comfortable unmuting, you can feel free to chat it and I will use that there, okay? All right, so our first, let me see, how do I move this? Oh, shoot, okay, that's okay. All right, so the first thing that I want to show you is what we call our first year cohort tracking report. And this is, I'm gonna minimize here. Okay, good, now I don't have to watch myself talk. This is what we use to track incoming freshman cohorts. For the longest time, it was a PDF document that was a couple hundred pages long that no one read. So now we have a visualization that looks at things like the demographic makeup of our cohorts, high school GPAs, ACT scores, SAT scores, retention, and graduation rates. One thing I want to also emphasize is that I realize that a lot of our students did not enter their undergraduate study as first-time freshmen. They came in as transfer students. The only reason that there's been so much emphasis on this is that IPEDS reporting generally looks at first-time cohorts and their outcomes. we are in the process of working on a transfer student dashboard, and once that's ready to launch, I'll be sure to share that. A couple of other things. So when you're working with a dashboard, one of my first and probably most important suggestions is to hit this little button here in the lower right-hand corner and make it a full screen viz. And that just gives you a lot more opportunity to, use the entirety of your screen so that it's easier to manipulate, easier to see. I just find it a lot easier. So again, it's this button here in the lower right-hand corner. If you want to exit, you click that. To go back in, you just click it again. Okay. Everyone good so far? Good. Okay. Excellent. Okay. One of the things that people generally start with is overall numbers rather than percentages, although that certainly can be relevant too, depending on what the proposal needs. So here on the right-hand side, you have what we call filters and parameters. And the distinction is really not important for your purposes. But basically, these boxes allow you to drill down to get the information that you're seeking. So for example, demographic grouping. Maybe you want ethnicity, but maybe you prefer it to be broken out by gender, because maybe you're looking at patterns by gender, for example. So if I clicked gender in this drop-down box, it's going to spin its wheels a bit. There we go. And it's going to recalculate everything according to gender. So for example, if I'm looking at this recent fall cohort and I hover, this is another important point, almost all of the visualizations you'll see have what they call hover to discover. And so if you just place your cursor, you don't have to click, place your cursor, it'll give you maybe a little bit finer detail or sort of outline what it is you're looking at. So for example, 57.2% of the 2019 freshman cohort was female, 42.8% was male, right? But let's say you don't want percentages, you need raw numbers. You can select count instead of percent of total. Not all of our visualizations will have this, but a good many of them do. And this is just because sometimes people do need the actual raw numbers, other times percentages are more helpful. So this helps you not have to calculate something on your phone or something like that. Okay, so you have that. And then you can start drilling down and say, well, most of the metrics that we focus on pertain really only to full-time students. Graduation rates are a good example of this. So let's click full-time, and that refines it further. Then you can start drilling down into the fun stuff and look at specific majors. So for example, I'm going to say biology. How many biology majors have we had as first-time freshmen? Now, to be clear, these majors are whatever they were declared as at the third Friday, so the end of the third week of classes of their very first semester. So they can and do change majors, but this is just a look at how people flow from matriculation through graduation. We also are working on trying to track students who start in one major and then migrate to another. So for example, if I click biology, again, so we're looking at gender, and then the count, and then full-time, and then biology, and then college. Now this is where it gets interesting. All right, you got a chat. What we got? Oh, very good. Okay, so Julie Rogers asked, do they include branch campus students or just Maine? It is Maine campus only. I'll type that just in case that gets lost. So these are Maine campus only for a number of reasons. Primarily, even though we are a system with multiple campuses, we report separately to IPEDS. So each campus is a distinct unit, a distinct entity. And so every campus will need to calculate its own cohort numbers and outcomes. Okay. This is where it gets a little bit interesting because the transition from parking everyone in University College at the outset to then putting people in their home colleges as pre-majors, will make a difference. And so, especially post, I would say 2017, make sure that you're also checking out some of these pre-majors. So for example, pre-biology, right? The numbers are much, much larger. So those are just small things to keep in mind. Almost every single major, I believe, with few exceptions, have a version of them. Questions so far? Good? Okay. Good. All right. A few other little things I wanted to point out that make this useful. So let's say you've done all this and then you're like, oh, I want to start over now. And I don't want to have to go back and unclick all these boxes because frankly, nobody should have to do that. This little button here, so it's an arrow that's sort of hitting a wall. You'll click that and everything automatically resets. So then you can start over and do whatever it is that you wanted to do. The other alternative is, let's say, I'm just gonna tinker a bit. Okay, and cool. All right, well, let's say I didn't want to select architecture. All right, so I just want to go back one step. That's your little arrow right here. Okay, so that undoes the last action that you took. But if you just want to wipe the slate clean, you're going to go to this reset button. A couple of other things, you want to share a link to a viz. Let's say you're talking to somebody about something you found and you want to share it. You can just copy and paste this link here. You click the little button here at the bottom right that looks sort of like a share icon. I'm not really sure how you would describe that. Click that, copy and paste the link, and it's shareable. The other important thing I wanted to show you was how to download either the underlying data, always de-identified of course, or downloading a picture if you want a visualization to pop into a PowerPoint slide, a Word document, or any other kind of format. So you click this little button down here. That's a box with an arrow pointing down, download. And if you want to download the data, you click, surprisingly, data, right? So this does not look helpful, of course, because it's just a very filtered version of the data. You can get a CSV file. It may preview the first 200 rows, but of course, there are far more rows than that. If you do want the CSV, so you'll click the tab that says full data, and then you'll click this link that says download all rows as a text file. And that gives you a CSV, which of course then you can save in Excel and then save it as an Excel document or something like that. Any questions on that?
Heather, this is kind of going backwards, but I saw that you had the option to embed data from Tableau.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, is that going to just embed the table, or is it going to embed the parameters as well?
It embeds just the visualization. So to give you an example, let me hide you guys for a second. So this this visualization is embedded on our website. And so I had to basically go in and click that embed code. It's a rather long code, and then put that in the HTML for our website. We use Cascade, like I think everyone pretty much does. But this just allows you to migrate that dashboard, that visualization, that chart into your website. It always links back to the original version that lives on our Tableau public page. And so the cool thing is if I do any kind of update, it's going to populate through to everywhere else that it's embedded. So you don't have to worry about, trying to manually request an update or anything like that. Did that help?
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
Cool.
And then for the text file, like for the CSV file, that just like downloads as raw data, right?
Right, it'll have the column headers and the values and everything, but it downloads in CSV format. Okay. Any other questions before I go on? Okay, cool. All right. So, couple of other small highlights before we go on to other things. Retention and graduation rates are almost always part of the grant proposals that I've been a part of. And you have the same sorts of options here, so I'm going to full screen it just to give you a sense. Let's go to graduation. All right. We're in the process of refining this a bit because the lines are informative but very hard to use when you have a lot of lines. And so we're trying to make it a little more user-friendly. One thing that I like to do is if I'm curious about a particular cohort, I just select that specific entry year. So I'm going to look at our 2014 cohorts. And whenever you have an option to do like this, one thing that you can do is unclick all, click whatever specific thing it is that you want, and then click apply. And that lets you limit. You also have, that's right here, you can select by college, major, time status, and the whole bit. And then again, you have a hover to discover capability. So for example, if you wanted to know what the 4-year graduation rate was for this cohort, you hover over where it lines up with semester 8, because 8 semesters equals 4 years. And you can see that it's 34%. You can also, again, drill down to more granular data, full or part-time, college, gender, ethnicity, and so on. All right, so let me look at that. All right, so one other good source that we have for any kind of sort of enrollment data, and this pertains to both graduate and undergraduate, and I'm gonna have to move this, there we go, is our official enrollment reports. Historically, they've just been PDFs, and we still produce the PDFs simply because some people like them in PDF form. But we also have a visual dashboard that allows you to, again, drill down in a way that those PDF documents don't really allow for. So again, this is going to be enrollment as of the census date of the semester. So that's the 3rd Friday. Again, that pivots off of what IPEDS requires for any of its numbers. With things like formula funding, it uses end of semester counts, head counts and credit hours, but the official enrollment report has historically always been census. So this will not necessarily reflect final numbers in any major or class or anything like that. Same sorts of things apply here. Here you can select whether you want to look at fall numbers, spring numbers, or summer numbers. I generally suggest going with fall numbers only because a lot of what we report to IPEDS is based on fall numbers. And in many cases, federal funding agencies at least will compare against what we as an institution have reported to IPEDS. And so it's good to be consistent with that methodology. Questions about that? Okay. Deal. So again, you have the option of filtering by different discipline areas, time status. I'm going to move this little box. By what level the student is. So, first year, sophomore, junior, senior, graduate, so on. So this can be very useful too if you just need overall numbers for things like how many students we had in a particular semester, or more specifically, how many female students we had in this particular discipline in this particular semester. I would strongly encourage you to just dive in one day in your copious free time that we all have, and just tinker around a little bit with it, because you can gain some really interesting insights and see things that maybe you intuitively knew, but having the numbers right in front of you can often be very enlightening. Again, this is another viz where you can hover. So right now I just have my cursor over one of the segments of the line, and it gives you, a little bit more detail. So if you need that, if you don't want to go through the process of filtering, you can get sort of at least high level granular information. Okay, so this is where I'm going to switch over to focus on primarily graduate student relevant data. Does anyone have any questions, comments, anything you need before we move on to that?
Heather, really fast, can you show how, can all of them be made into visualizations, and can you manipulate the visualization after you have downloaded it?
So you can't. You theoretically could download the entire Tableau workbook if you have Tableau desktop. But one thing you can do, and I can show that really quickly here. So let's say I want an overall visualization first. So I would, just go to the download button straight away and click image. And then you can, in essence, just save it as a PNG. You can also convert it to a JPEG or whatever photo format works for you. But then let's say I'm really only interested in, let's pick on engineering. All right. So now we're looking at just engineering's numbers for the same parameters, same time frame, and all that. And so then you could then download that image. If you were just putting them into a proposal document, if you were putting them into some PowerPoint slides or Prezi or anything like that, you would then be able to just download that image, and you would save it, convert it to whatever file format you want, and so on. And you can do this an infinite number of times. Maybe not what you're hoping for, but with Tableau Workbook, you can manipulate it to a certain extent if you have what's called Tableau Reader, and that is a free app that doesn't involve any kind of subscription or any sort of payment. And that does allow you to view and manipulate visualization like on your local machine. So that might also be helpful if you know that you're not going to be Wi-Fi accessible in some place or time. Maybe you're presenting at a conference and you're not sure about the stability of your connection. It would be a good idea to just download the workbook and then use Tableau Reader to display it so that you can then interact with it as if you were online. Does that help, Stephanie?
Yeah, I think so.
Awesome. Cool. Anyone else have questions? Need me to review anything? Okay. All right, so we are going to move now to the Graduate Studies dashboard. And this is something that we worked with Julie Coonrod on for a couple of months, sketching out ideas and then refining it. And so far, it's been a pretty heavily used dashboard. We're pretty happy about that. So that also lives, of course, under facts and figures. And you'll just click on the menu and then click on Graduate Studies Dashboard. And what this provides, first I guess I should full screen it. Okay. This has a lot of the same sorts of features that you've seen in other visualizations where you can change between things like count or percent or demographic grouping. This one also allows you to look at either enrollments or degrees. So rather than creating two separate dashboards, in essence, we sort of combined everything into one viz. You can also choose degree type. And so the default is always all, but say for instance, you're only interested in doctoral and master's degrees. You could just click doctoral, master's, apply. And it's gonna fail. All right, my connection's a little wonky today, sorry about that. Okay. So, doctoral, sometimes it helps to go a little slowly. All right. And apply. Right, and then let's say we really want counts instead of percentages, okay. All right, and then you can start drilling down to look at things like what college a program lives within. So click on engineering again. And then drill down to, let's say, civil engineering. I can get it to go. There we go. Okay. And so you can get a sense of not only your total enrollments for a particular year, right? So, but you can also see how it disaggregates by ethnicity. Same thing with gender or with citizenship status. Questions on that? We also have another visualization that admittedly looks somewhat similar in that it seems to have a lot of the same sorts of variables and disaggregations and things like that. But what makes this one a little bit different is that it gives you a sense of proportionality. That is to say, what percentage of all of our graduate degrees are granted within, what discipline area or even what program. So let's take a quick look at the degrees conferred. Of course it did that, sorry. Degrees conferred. Now we'll just look at the most recent academic year, just for simplicity's sake. And we'll go further and exclude certificates. And we'll also exclude professional degrees. So we're really just looking at research graduate degrees. Okay, so this is another one where you can hover over a particular area. So if you hover over, say, Anderson Schools of Management, you can see that in the most recent year, 20.8% of all of the graduate degrees that we conferred, of course, just doctoral and master's degrees, were within that college, right? So you get a sense of, how many of our degrees are coming from what general areas. But then if you want to get even more granular, so again, we'll stick with engineering here. If you click on engineering, this recalculates so that you have by program and by major. So for example, here you have electrical engineering, the master's degree and PhD degree listed separately. So when you hover here, it gives you sort of a quick granular snapshot. So electrical engineering, it's a master's degree. It's the MS program in electrical engineering. And of course, in some disciplines, there may be multiple types of master's degrees, say an MS or an MA. So that distinction could be important. What percent of the total of all of the engineering degrees are represented by the MS in electrical engineering, and then it gives you raw counts. One thing I'd also like to point out is that you can get a multi-year average. So you could also choose to select 2017, and then that gives you a 2-year count and a 2-year average. So if you're trying to make some kind of point in a grant proposal about longitudinal trends in enrollments or degrees conferred, something like this would be helpful in drafting that. And we got a chat. Overlay gender or ethnicity on the grad degrees viz. Okay, so Mary Jo asked, can you overlay gender or ethnicity on the grad degrees viz? Okay, so the answer is no, but that's only because we do have a dashboard that I can show you quickly. In our facts and figures, you go to fact book. And then you click on degrees. You do have the ability to drill down and find out, how many Hispanic women got master's degrees in physics in a particular year. So in fact, I'm actually kind of curious, so let's see if we can find this. Okay. Angela asked, is it possible to request custom reporting for trainees who are members of centers? The answer to that is we can talk offline because that's probably a more involved conversation. But yes, I would be happy to talk about that. All right, so let's say master's degrees. Okay, and then let's look at physics. So you scroll down to physics. What you can also do is type in the box until what you want comes up, and then you can select it that way. All right, so now we're looking at MS in physics. Okay, so 12 people total received a master's in physics in the most recent completed academic year. Now, the question is, okay, well, how many of them were women and how many of them were men? Okay, so we have 8 men, 4 women. If I click on women, we now have our answer, right? So it was 0 Hispanic women, but we had 2 white and 2 international who got degrees. You can also sort of go at it from the other direction because these filters will update and only allow you to select things that actually exist. So if I had done that, let's say I'm only interested in master's degrees for women who are Hispanic. Okay. If I select any of these programs, they should, theoretically, only allow me to select ones that actually have people who are in those categories. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. One other thing I want to bring your attention to is our Tableau public gallery. A lot of the things that you'll see here also live on our website, but conversely, there are things that live here that we don't put on our website for various reasons. It's not to say that any of them couldn't be there, but at a certain point, we have to make sure that we're not just loading too much into our website and making it hard to find things. One quick thing I wanted to show you at the top. That makes sense. Okay, we do have a graduate time to degree visualization. The first year cohort dashboard gives you information about retention rates, graduation rates. We also have a separate time to degree dashboard for undergraduates who start as first-time freshmen. But this looks at graduate, not only time to degree after comprehensive exam is something that we're still working on with OGS because either not everybody takes a comp exam or they're not being logged in then. And so the data there are a bit spotty. And so I would caution you maybe not to rely so much on this for the time being. But we do have a combined graduation and retention rates. So that's to say, out of your initial group of incoming students at whatever level and program and so on, what percentage of them by a certain point of time have either graduated or remain enrolled in the program, that is to say they've persisted. Ideally, people finish in a timely fashion, but persistence is much better than just dropping out. So we did combine those. At some point, I think we may try to produce separate visualizations for both metrics, but for the time being, they're combined. So again, you have the option of choosing level of study. So that's going to give you, doctoral or master's, which college the program resides in, major, citizenship status, ethnicity, and you can select multiple. So I've had some questions about underrepresented minorities, and so you could go through and click the boxes next to the groups who reside within that underrepresented minority category, and then of course gender. So that also gives you a sense of how well particular groups are doing, if people are being delayed due to circumstances perhaps out of their control or circumstances that we can help them with. But anyway, I think that's about all I have. I'm going to stop sharing. And I have a chat. Any questions? I know it's a lot, and you may feel the need to go back and watch the video, and then maybe in your own explorations you forget about something or just have questions. Do feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help. Maybe once we're all back in person on campus, I'm more than happy to come by and give you a quick walkthrough, maybe with some targeted examples that are relevant to your area. But in any case, do feel free to reach out.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much, Heather, for that
Thank
walkthrough
you.
of Tableau.
Sure.
So for the last few minutes that we're here, I'm just going to run through some pieces that you can get from my reports. It's a little bit more like the information that Heather was sharing with Tableau was fantastic. Like it's very customizable as long as you understand how to customize it. So it was really great getting that tutorial from her and being able to see her make those modifications. If you need to build your own tables that are specifically customizable, I think you can still get that information from Tableau, but My Reports is another option to be able to do that. So I did make some slides. I really like the organization and to be able to see it firsthand. So I am going to share those so that you can all see what I'm talking about. Let's see. So this is just talking a little bit from what I talked about last week about why you would need to use population data in a grant proposal. The first thing that we talked about was complying with the solicitation. So this is a data table that I put together for the NRT submission that went through biology, the biology department. It's very interdisciplinary and included a number of departments related to retention and graduation rates. And so the NRT, the NSF NRT, which is the NSF Research Traineeship Grant, requires you to include data related to recruitment and retention, and then also to have time to degree for your PhD students. And so this was the information that I was able to pull from My Reports to fill that. You can also use it to strengthen the argument. So this is information that came from a proposal that Graduate Studies put into the Department of Education earlier this year. And it's talking about their argument that our undergraduate level of ethnic minority is much higher than our graduate level of ethnic minority, and how we need to adapt the way that we are recruiting and retaining students to be able to make that more leveled. You can also use it to tell a better story. So this is a data table that was from Kerry Howe's CREST proposal that he recently was awarded. And what he was saying was that the Center of Water Resources that he leads for the CREST has got a higher number of Hispanic, Native American, and female students than the School of Engineering in general. And so he was saying, what a great contribution his center was making and how it needed to be refunded. And luckily for us, the National Science Foundation agreed, and it was funded. So now I'm going to just walk through if you are, if your job requirements, would give you access to this kind of data, this is where you would find it. In our meeting that we had with my research development network, we were talking about maybe a way of identifying people within the different colleges who already have this access, administrative access, to be able to reach out to. Or if you need something for a grant, again, our office, the Faculty Research Development Office, is available to be able to pull this kind of data as well. But if you have the access, if you are interested in getting the access and your supervisor in the My Reports agrees, then this is how you would be able to do it if you're working from home. So this is directly from the unmvpn.unm.edu. You can just put in your username and ID, password, and then you can be able to access UNM My Reports. So I'm going to look at just a few of the ad hoc reporting mechanisms and what you may be able to find from them. So if you want to know who applied and was accepted, you can look through the admissions applicants detail. This is something that I needed to use for the NRT. It has specifically who applied, like the number, but it also has their ethnicity. It even has their high school if you wanted to know that information. It has their gender so that you can understand, who are the people who are applying to these programs. And then it also measures who is accepted. And it has a way of being able to identify who has been accepted and then who accepts that acceptance. Because that's something that a lot of PIs are able to use to say that, you know, hey, we have this great program at the University of New Mexico, but maybe we're not recruiting the right students, or maybe the right students are not, you know, being invested in coming to the University of New Mexico for whatever reason, and they can show that through the data of, you know, maybe they apply, maybe they're accepted, but then, you know, they go elsewhere because maybe they're offered another position at another university and they decide to go in that direction. That's usually a graduate studies question that comes up. Another question that you could ask is who is enrolled in specific classes and or majors. You can use the class list for this. This is something that I was using with my career cohort. We were able to pull information from their specific departments, looking at the demographics and the gender diversity that they have in their specific majors, so that they could think about, you know, whether or not the work that they were going to be doing would be helping to increase enrollment, increase diversity, increase gender equity, and different questions like that. Who is enrolled in specific courses? So this is something else that is helpful if you are looking at creating a new course as a result of a grant, or if you are wanting to show that you need to have a change in the organization or in the education and training related to a specific degree program or a specific course. This was also a question that came up with the NRT that I was helping with recently. It was looking at the enrollment of specific courses that were related to the water resources training that is offered. And so, you know, just pulling numbers out related to who is taking those specific courses, what is the diversity of them, if, you know, that is something that is interesting, is a way of being able to check. Who has graduated and how long did it take? So this is something that Heather was showing that is available in Tableau. This is another way of being able to find that out. So you can find out who has gotten their degree. You can also see when they began their degree program to be able to calculate how long it took them to get their degree, which was a question also. Who is enrolled and what are they majoring in? The academic study detailed guided ad hoc kind of gives you a really broad range of information. You can scale it down to main campus, to the branch campuses, to HSC. Any of the reports that are in my reports can be calculated in that way. So mine was really short, just because, again, if you don't have access to that, let me get out of here. No. Sorry, I'm having troubles with my, I don't want to share anything else. Stop sharing, there we go. That's what I wanted to do. Sorry about that. Still getting used to this. Yeah, so mine was really short, just because when you are when you have that access, you can be able to get it. I was going to go in and pull some information just so I could show how to, you know, what kind of information you can get from the My Reports, and then to also show how to remove duplicates, because that is something that you will definitely get with those reports. Does anyone have any questions about a specific type of report or question that they would like to answer? How do you request access? So that I talked about in the earlier in the presentation last week. Let me get on to, let's see. I was having trouble earlier, so I'm just going to use Safari because I was having trouble showing the VPN earlier. So let me use this. Okay, so in order to request access, you go to My UNM and you log in that way. And you would go down here to banner. So it's a banner authorization request. And so then you would be able to find it. I named it last week, and so it was in my earlier slides. I think it has to do with student, yeah, here we go, student detail My Reports user. Because of the role that I play helping interdisciplinary proposals, I have access to the campus data. But if your role is specific to a college or school, you would be able to get access to that particular school or college, not necessarily to all of the data. For you, Jennifer, you'd probably have to talk to Tom about signing off on it. It has to be a supervisor that signs off on it, and then again, you have to make the appeal that your job would be helped if you had access to that. So since I am in here really fast, we can use this to pull something. So say for instance, if, let's see, yeah, let's just do this one. So if I wanted to go into the class list, of course now it's being funky. No, I don't want to do that. It was just in it. Okay, when it's doing that, it just means that it's logged me out. It does do that. Sometimes being on the VPN, you just don't see the damage from it. So for My Reports, going to Student, and then the Student Reports. If you go to the class list, you could pull something really, really mean, and I don't have a lot of time right now before we are going to be done, so I'll see if it will do it. Of course, you are pulling it from the server, and we are off campus right now using the VPN, so it may not have enough pull while I am on Zoom to be able to run the report effectively, which is a bummer. But say for instance, let me see, that's probably not going to let me. If I stop sharing this, but then if I share, let's see. So if I go to one of my files, hope you guys can see this. So I was just pulling this information for members of my cohort, like I said. So if I looked at computer science, for instance. So this was data that I pulled off of the class list. And so if I'm looking at the total students, like I filtered this. But if I look at all of it, this is what, let's see, my screen sharing is paused, Zoom sharing. Well, that doesn't seem to be working. Yeah, it's pausing that. Okay, let me see if I can share that. Okay, should be able to do that.
Now it moved.
Now it moved. Can you see a spreadsheet?
Yes.
Okay. Zoom is complicated. So this is what I pulled out, and I did it with student ID, and so I was able to remove duplicates on this, but what it's doing is it's just pulling all of the students that are majoring in computer science. And so then, and that is graduate and undergraduate, it has their ethnicity, it has their gender, it has their student registration status, and the way that I am able to make sure that I'm not duplicating those is I go to data and I go to remove duplicates. And so like when I first had this and it was the raw data, I was able to choose this specific column B, and then when I remove duplicates, it takes care of that. And so then I'm able to just see that individual students, doesn't matter how many courses they are enrolled in that semester, because this would pull all of those classes. So a student could be registered for one class, or they could be registered for 6 or 7 classes, depending on how aggressive they are at getting their degree. So that helps you to remove them and to be able to just get individual students, be able to do that. So that is a rough idea of what you can do and what you can be able to show. It is very individualized to proposals. So if you do need help with a proposal and you're having trouble finding the data, coming to the Research Development Office or reaching out to the Office of Institutional Analytics is a really great way to help you solve that problem. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, I think we have given you all kinds of interesting information. I'm going to try to get back. Okay. There we go. You're welcome. Thank you for coming, Emily. All right, and like I said, I'm not sure if you guys all saw it. I've been having troubles getting the video online, but I will continue working on that. And if all else fails, I'll send you the access through Dropbox or something like that to be able to get the video of this session and then last session as well if you needed to have access to that. So thank you so much for coming, and we look forward to seeing you around. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you both.
Thank you.